This must be the place where Yamato Takeru no Mikoto came down from the sky.
Welcome back, nerds. Fino here with a guide for the Samurai Remnant Saber, aka Yamato Takeru, aka Twink Supreme. He's a limited 5-star released as a New Year's servant, in advance of the Samurai Remnant crossover. Takeru absolutely shreds through enemies in his own game, like many of Iori's tag team partners. But let's see if he brings that same magic here, or if he pulls an assassin and scrubs it up. Why'd they make him so bad? Maybe he should have spent less time farming aura and more time in the gym. But this isn't about Shiome Sr. Instead, let me tell you about Sabers. In the AoE Arts department, the Saber class was an order of magnitude worse off than pretty much all of the other standard classes. Stuck with the 1-star Jason and his anemic stat line, the 4-star Summer Tomoe who can't farm her way out of a paper bag. It'd probably help if she took off those goggles. Then there's Senji Muramasa. Old Man Shiro was the premium option for Art Sabers because, you know, he could actually do it without getting roadblocked by the first damage check. But he had a lot of downsides, the biggest of which is that, while his NP has a ramping buff, his skill-based steroids are absolutely crippled. He has a single-turn rainbow buff, and that's it. To this day, he's stuck like this, just with an NP upgrade that increases his damage, good, and then adds quick and buster to his ramping buff? I don't know about that one. We don't even have this upgrade on NA yet. He's not getting it till 2027's anniversary. My point in regurgitating old history is that the bar for AoE Art Sabers is in hell. This isn't a question of whether Takeru is better than Muramasa. He very clearly power creeps the guy. Instead, you have to ask yourself, does power creeping Muramasa make him a necessary acquisition? So keep that in the back of your head as I go through the fundamentals. One of TK's nice upgrades is that he has 50% total charge available in his toolkit, but it's split between 2 skills. Art servants in my experience tend to benefit more from small batteries that they can deploy piecemeal over big chungus bricks. Anyone that's ever tried to use Summer Melusine in a multi-core team will know the pain of being 20 to 40% short on wave 2 and needing to blow your entire 80% load in one go. The first of Takeru's charge skills is Blood-Soaked Prince. This is a 30% battery and 3k guts combo. It also has a strings attached method of generating even more meter. If one of your other servants bites the dust within 3 turns of you activating Blood-Soaked Prince, Takeru will gain 25% charge on the spot. While not an effect you'd rely on in standard farming, there are some situations where you can plan around it. For one, self-destructing servants like Arash and Habitrot will qualify, if you're fighting a mixed class arrangement. Another option, more relevant to boss fights, is to run a taunter who's guaranteed to take aggro and have an unfortunate accident. Jufu with Outrage is a favorite combo of mine. For a third option, you could play around fight mechanics to have your other 2 team members get nailed by a breakbar Noble Phantasm. If it's the purging type, Jufu becomes even more valuable since she can give Takeru purge resistance, letting him stay healthy on the field while she and Castoria take a nap. Takeru's other battery is Mana Burst, Water. This is a 20% self-charge with 3 turns of an arts buff, and 1 turn of NP damage. First of all, you're going to want to prioritize leveling this since it has both a battery and a loop-relevant steroid. Second, I couldn't help but notice that TK got Muramasa'd just a little bit. Why does the NP damage buff need to be A, 1 turn, and B, on the same skill as his arts buff? Because now you have to choose between losing damage on the boss wave of a given fight or every other wave. You kinda just have to feel out when you can get away with holding this. For my part, I just use it on turn 1 and find out if I fall short on any damage checks. Not exactly an elegant solution, but it gets the job done. The last of Takeru's skills is Divine and Evil Annihilator. This grants him 3 turns of 3 buffs: anti-divine damage, anti-demonic damage, and crit damage. The first 2 are power mods setting at 50%. Not quite Skahak's eye-watering 100%, but 50 is still pretty good. Quick refresher on power mods. These are special damage modifiers that apply to both your normal cards and your Noble Phantasms, so you have an increased incentive to Mighty Chain with Takeru while you have this up. Divine enemies are common bosses, and demonic enemies are common trash mobs, so your odds of at least one of these being relevant is pretty reasonable. Like all of Takeru's skills, I'd level this up when you can, but its benefits aren't guaranteed the same way as they are with Blood-Soaked Prince and Mana Burst Water, so prioritize those first. Now let's talk about his Noble Phantasm. Special technique, 8 Current Raging Storm. This is an AoE arts attack with a number of properties, some interesting and some jank. First of all, this thing is a hit count of 8. That's nuts for an arts AoE. By comparison, our whipping boy Shiro has a measly 3. This gap lets Takeru mindlessly blow away cannon fodder and even reach for some creative loops against non-3-3x formations. As for the jank, a bit of it comes from his overcharge, defense down post-hit. I was kinda hoping we're past the point of having effects apply after they'd be relevant for your NPs, but Takeru implicitly wants you to follow up with his face cards. especially in situations where you can get mileage from Divine and Evil Annihilator. But it's obviously damage left on the table in normal situations. The strangest thing about a Current Raging Storm is that it has a single target component. If you select an enemy before going into your card screen, that target is hit with a preemptive Arch Resistance debuff, 50% for a single turn. If you don't pick anyone, it defaults to the one on the right. So for those of you who use secret techniques to farm in your sleep, just remember to target an enemy to get Takeru's damage bonus against them. Not only does this property affect Takeru's own damage, but if you chain another Arts NP behind it, you can take advantage of this debuff while also gaining overcharge. While this may seem like a no-brain game plan, the multi-core element is a bit perilous for Takeru. He has a grand total of 0 mechanics that spread buffs or charge onto his teammates. You just have the 2 debuffs on his Noble Phantasm, something that's typically only relevant for the final wave of a fight when a double tap might be expected. In early turns, he can't compensate for any weaknesses of his teammates, which is the mark of a really good multi-core servant. Instead, Takeru takes a very selfish approach to team building, meaning you have to throw everything into him and hope his pseudo-single target damage is enough to zero out bosses and mid-bosses. When his divine or demonic buffs qualify, this is often possible, but it also means that you have to worry about a lot of damage variance in fights where only one enemy fits the bill. With inflated mid-boss health values, that's going to be the usual roadblock. Takeru wants Black Grail in the overwhelming majority of fights, given his generous loop statistics, but until you get one, I'd go with Ocean Flyer as a filler option. He doesn't need the starting charge, so if you have a good formal craft or even something like Heaven's Feel, it'll fill the gap until you get your best in slot, Sexy Evil Homunculus. As for command codes, I'd recommend Star Absorption and Flat Star codes to improve your follow-up against bosses. Holy Knight Aurora is great if you have it, for the latter application. Lady Justice gives absorption in 2 stars, while Miss Majin gives absorption and crit damage. If you want to really leverage Takeru's crit follow-up, you can give your supports a combination of Stardom CEs like Golden Catches the Carp, or Star Income options like Fragment of 2030. For append skills, you really want append 2 in order to open up your options for skill sequencing, which is par for the course with Art Servants. For Takeru specifically, it can potentially let you delay using Mana Burst Water if you don't need the extra damage. But you may also want to consider using his anti-class append of all things. You see, he's got anti-Saber, and for a while this was one of the worst things you could get, barring the odd genius that got anti-Berserker. But with the advent of Grand Servant duels, there actually is a niche for servants that have an anti-append against their own class. Now don't get too excited. Takeru isn't exactly ideal for the fight, though his NP does get its pseudo-single target effect against her. But if you plan to take Takeru above level 100 anyway, this append will make your Grand Servant experience a little smoother, assuming you have enough coins to do both. But for normal applications, you're going to find the upcoming append 4 and 5 more useful for their crit damage and cooldown reduction respectively. The good news is there's going to be a mechanic that lets you switch your append levels around so you won't be locked in. So is Takeru an upgrade over Muramasa? Yeah, easily. But is he a must-roll? Well, not to spoil too much about a video in the works, but there are very few servants this year that I'd put in that category. We've reached the time in FGO where your roster really does become a choose-your-own-adventure. As long as you have the fundamentals, card type supports, a few generalists that play nice in multi-core, and some tactical enablers, who you pick to be your in-class beatstick is largely a matter of preference. Though some will be better suited for their respective Grand Servant duels, and some can really let you dominate 90++ nodes. Takeru fits into that choose-your-own-adventure category. He's undoubtedly good, but not an absolute necessity. Leverage or ignore him according to your tastes. Thanks for watching, lads. I'm going the full distance on Ushigozen on Sunday, so stop by and watch if you want to see that in action. Twitch.tv/Finotaisen. I stream every weekend at 3 p.m. Pacific time. If you want to get my weekly schedule, I post it on Discord and Twitter as well. Links in the description. Till next time.